This is a Nimbus Lite 3 and the Vomero 16. One gives us a hint of a brand's future, the other gives us a glimpse back into a familiar past. And while I really enjoy both of these shoes, which one is the better shoe? It's time to lace them up and head out for a run. .86 miles, 8 minutes, 48 seconds per mile, and 139 beats per minute today, going for a nice and easy run in the Nimbus Lite 3, and also going for a very similar run, also an easy run in the Vomero 16, so I can compare these two shoes head to head. Now, before I go into my thoughts on which is the better shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. The Nimbus Lite 3 was sent to me by ASICS for the purpose of review, and I purchased the Vomero 16. However, no matter how a shoe got to me, no one's paying me to make this video or to use either shoe, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with those disclosures out of the way, let's talk about the Nimbus Lite 3 and the Vomero 16. First, let's go over some specs on these shoes. Let's start out with the Vomero 16. With this shoe, we've got a 29.5 millimeter stack height shoe with a 10 millimeter drop, giving us 19.5 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. In the midsole of this shoe, we've got three things. We've got zoom air pocket in the forefoot. Then we also have a carrier around that, which is primarily what you're seeing when you look at this shoe. And that is, I believe, SR02, or it's a midsole foam that is very similar to Cushlon or other previous EVA type foams that Nike has used in the past. And the main story for the Vomero 16 is that inside, kind of like an insert within that SR02, and in conjunction with that Zoom Air Pocket, there is Zoom X midsole foam, which is the foam that's in all of Nike's super shoes. On the outsole, we've got full rubber coverage, and I love the gum color of this outsole. On the upper, we've got a very stretchy toe box, very comfortable up here. And then as we move further back, that's where things start to get a little bit less clean, a little bit more muddled. I mean, they're trying to put a lot of comfort into this shoe, and I think maybe that's where some problems are happening. But let's go over some of the specs first. We've got a flywire system in the midfoot cage, so that way when you're tugging on the laces, it's not just merely tightening from the top, it's actually pulling from the sides of the shoe and pulling the entire thing up to give you more support and structure, and also fewer pinch points. Underneath those laces, we've got a very puffy tongue, and one of the puffiest tongues that I've ever seen. I think Nike's actually having a hard time fitting this much puffiness inside the shoe here, and so there's some weird folds that are kind of happening on this tongue. And then that puffiness, or like the idea of that puffiness, is continuing all around kind of the heel cup of the shoe as well, where you're seeing a lot of padding up on the parts of the shoe that are going to touch your ankle. Further down on the heel cup, there's a lot of armor and structural supports in here. There is a structured heel cup that is further bolstered by this external heel counter, this giant piece of plastic that's on the outside here, and also the foam curls up towards the back as well. Altogether, in terms of the weight of this shoe, Nike lists the weight at 10.9 ounces for a men's size 10. I wear a US men's size 9, which is reference size. So usually when you're looking at weights of shoes, at least for men, the size that I wear is the size and weight that they're talking about. I ended up weighing this shoe myself so I can figure out what the weight is for my shoe. The measured weight for this shoe came at 10.0 ounces and 286 grams. Next, let's talk about some specs on the Nimbus Lite 3. This is a 25 millimeter stack height shoe, but also has a 10 millimeter drop. Leaves us with 15 millimeters of stack height in the foam. And like the Vomero 16, there is midsole foam here, and then there's also stuff that you can't see that's on the inside. The stuff you can't see is flight foam, and I think that they've tweaked and tinkered with the formulation of flight foam here that makes it nice and bouncy, and I'm really enjoying the changes that they made to it. It's a little bit softer, a little bit springier, a little bit more lively. There's also ASICS gel in the heel, and there's a little ring of it toward the pad of the foot underneath, you know, the big toe, like this, the biggest part of that pad of your foot. So you've got that in there as well. But I believe ASICS has also reformulated the gel that's in these shoes to be a little bit softer, a little bit lighter than what gel has been in the past. But that's it as far as things that are in this Nimbus Lite 3. As far as the outsole goes, we have ASICS rubber on the outsole that is strategically placed, so there is a lot of coverage, but there also are plenty of cutouts to hopefully cut down on some weight. On the upper, we have a very stretchy, very comfortable toe box, very similar to what we saw in the Vomero 16, but that simplicity that's in the toe box up here kind of extends back toward the rest of the upper in the Nimbus Lite 3. We've got a knit tongue, so no padding at all, and this knit is super comfortable, very stretchy, and it just hugs your foot very nicely. Moving back towards the heel cup, there is quite a bit of padding. After all, this is still a Nimbus, and it has that Nimbus level comfort in terms of the parts that are touching the back of the ankle. But as far as like structure and armor that's in the heel cup, they're a little bit more restrained. So there is some rigidity back here, but it's not super tough. It's not armored plate. It's not anything like we see in the Vomero 16. Altogether, this comes in at a weight that's much lighter than the Vomero 16, 9.2 ounces and 260 grams. All right. Now that we've taken care of the specs, let's talk about what it's been like to run in these shoes. Now, I really enjoy running in each of these shoes. The Vomero 16 was one of my favorite shoes from 2021, and the Nimbus Lite 3 is probably going to end up being one of my favorite shoes of 2022. They're both excellent shoes. They're both really fun to run in. They're comfortable, especially in the toe box areas. Lots of stretchiness here, lots of comfort, plenty of room for my toes in each of these shoes. And that's really uncharacteristic for Nike, because Nike tends to kind of bunch the toes a little bit, have a little bit more racer fit, even in their more relaxed running shoes. So I'm really enjoying what this Vomero 16 is bringing me. And I enjoyed the ride in each of these shoes. There's a good amount of cushioning that's in each of these shoes that makes it suitable for longer runs, but there's also a liveliness in each of the midsole foams, or I guess midsole systems, that's in each of these shoes that also makes them a little bit more fun and capable of picking up the pace a little bit if you need to do that. And at the same time, neither of these shoes are going to be your workout shoes or your race shoes. Some people may use them that way, but I think for a lot of people that are out there, they may use these for their easy days or their long run days, but they're going to reach for another shoe for those workouts and for your races. They both have very comfortable heel cups and are putting comfort at a premium for these cushioned daily trainer type applications. They both have a lot of padding on all the parts that are going to be touching the back of the heel and ankle. And they both do a pretty good job of being forgiving in terms of foot strike, both in terms of its soft cushioned ride, no matter where you're landing, whether you're a heel striker, mid-foot striker, or a forefoot striker, still going to be comfortable for you in this shoe. And also, if your foot strike is getting a little bit sloppy as you get tired, neither shoe is really going to penalize you. Instead, the foam is going to kind of like mold itself and make it so that it helps you ultimately still get a really nice foot strike and take off for the next stride. But there are some differences of these shoes that I think kind of help set them apart. I think that even though the numbers on the Vomero 16 are bigger in terms of there's more stack height in the heel, there's more stack height in the forefoot, and there's more technology in the midsole, for me, this feels like overall a very low shoe. The stack height feels really low. If I were to guess after having run in each of these two shoes, I would say that the stack height in the Vomero 16 feels much lower than the stack height in the Nimbus Lite 3. And there are some times where I feel like I wish I had a little bit more in the forefoot in terms of stack height and cushioning. And it feels like, I don't know, bottoming out isn't exactly what I'm feeling. Or maybe what I think it is that the amount of cushioning in the forefoot isn't matching the amount of cushioning that's in the heel. I don't get the sense of that in the Nimbus Lite 3, where I feel like there's plenty of cushion no matter where I am in the shoe. I also feel like, in addition to the stack height feeling taller in the Nimbus Lite 3, I also feel like the shoe itself is taller. I feel like it comes up a little bit higher on the ankle. It comes up higher on the front of the foot. I also feel like there's a lot more volume in the toe box. When I'm looking at the Vomero 16, the volume in this toe box seems really low, although it hasn't like been a problem, but just looking at the shoe, it feels like there's just not a lot of space up in the toes down here in terms of like a depth or a height in terms of what's in the toe box, but everything else also feels low. Now the Vomero 16 has always, for me, felt like a very low cut shoe, and it reminds me a lot of a shoe that I actually never ran in before, but something that I've seen and I always thought was really fascinating. Mo Farah, when he trained in Nike Pegasus, he would always cut his because he felt like they came up too high in the back, and he also thought that they came up too high on the sides of the ankles. So he always got pairs of Pegasus from Nike and he would cut them. And eventually Nike just started making a Mo Farah version that had a really low cut ankle. And I feel like the Vomero 16 has been kind of doing that for a few years now. And I definitely feel that here. Going from this shoe one day to the Nimbus Lite 3 the next, it made it really, really apparent in terms of just how low it feels like this is. So I think that maybe all this armor in here, this external heel cup, is partially there because it's trying to balance the fact that there's not a lot of like support up top, higher up on the ankle, and all the support has to be kind of down here. But that's always for me been like a signature feature of this. So everything just feels kind of slammed to the ground, even though this is supposed to be Nike's attempt at a max cushion shoe. And I think that what ultimately that does, like the only real drawback I have of this shoe is that like sometimes it feels like there's kind of two shoes going on here. The front feels very much like the old Pegasus, the Pegasus that I loved so much when it was Cushlon foam and like the full length Zoom Air pocket. That's kind of like what I'm feeling from like the arch forward. From the arch back, I'm starting to feel like the extra weight that's in the heel. I start to notice it, and it definitely feels like kind of like a little bit of a mixed message that my feet are getting. And that translates ultimately to the fact that this is a much heavier shoe than the Nimbus Lite 3. Now it seems like I've been kind of like really attacking the Vomero 16, but it's really kind of like getting very specific about little things that I dislike about either one of these two shoes, because both of them are very, very good, but we are trying to put them head to head to figure out which one is going to be the winner. And based on all the things that we talked about today, the ways that I do love the nostalgia of the Vomero 16, but ultimately it leaves me wanting like a little bit more cushioning in the forefoot, a little bit more editing in terms, or I guess I want less really, but a little bit more editing in terms of what's going on in the back of the shoe. Because of those very slight critiques, I am going to go with the Nimbus Lite 3. It's a really fun shoe. It's a really comfortable shoe, and it's a very highly edited shoe coming from a brand that also enjoys putting a lot of stuff on their shoes. They've really been restrained with the design. There's nothing here that doesn't need to be here. It's a very comfortable upper, great materials. A lot of it is made out of recycled materials too, by the way. It leads to a relatively lightweight and a very fun running experience. So that's why the Nimbus Lite 3 is going to be my champion in this head-to-head battle. If you have any questions about either of these two shoes, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do over on my Kofuzi Run Club live stream channel right here on YouTube. I'd love to talk to you guys in the chat. Links will be in the description for how you can find that live stream. Before I go, I want to remind you about the charity runner of the week. This week, it's Kurt Owens. He's going to be running the Chicago Marathon this year in honor of his older brother and raising money for the Alzheimer's Association. I've been happy to donate $100 of my money to his cause, and someone also recently donated $25 under the name Amateur Pro Runner, which I think is just absolutely hilarious. Thank you for doing that. And I hope that that kind of thing encourages you guys to also consider donating even just the minimum amount, $1 or $2, to help support Kurt's cause. My goal in this Charity Runner of the Week program is to support you guys as you guys are raising money in the communities where you live. And hopefully we can show the world how much we runners can do when we run together as a pack. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?